I really do feel for digital publishers today because I feel like the challenges are mounting and we're not solving as many as we've been talking about over the last decade. I mean, we're still dealing with ad fraud, we're dealing with ad blockers. We have more competition than ever before as it relates to awesome content that's free and accessible to consumers. Privacy and data compliance is becoming, a huge burden for the industry, and but I personally would love for us to really think about and solve the challenges around just the consumer experience and ad load in general. There's been a lot of talk about ad load. I'm sure there will be, limited frequency and issues with the same brand appearing all the time, but I think consumers need to have a voice today in our conversation. I think consumers have a lot of choice now, and consumers are going to ultimately determine the success of our industry. So I'm hoping that the challenge that we spend a little more time addressing is that end user, the viewer, the consumer that's consuming this content. This is the challenge that Infillion is solving for in the industry. We've been in market for over a decade with a consumer-first ad format that gives consumers a value exchange for spending time with an advertiser. I'm hopeful that we as an industry can come together and solve that problem, not just talk about it, but that's the one that excites me and the reason that I'm here.
Well, in the past 6 months, we've seen companies like Netflix and Disney Plus add these ad-supported tiers to their streaming services. What can you tell us about the consumer preference for an ad-free subscription versus an ad-supported one?
Our research, so at Infillion, we put out a great study last fall with Ipsos, and we know that consumers, they rely on access to great content. They enjoy ad-supported experiences because it gives them access. They can't afford full subscriptions. So as an industry, I'm not surprised that Netflix and Disney went there. I mean, we are $170 billion digital industry. I'm sure all of these companies want to tap into the brands and marketers that would like to bring these consumer and content experiences to life. So I'm excited to see that there are ads there. It'll be really interesting to see how they think about their ad load and how they think about their ad experience. We also did, in that same study, we asked questions to consumers about their experiences with ads. And one of the things that did pop up and piqued our interest was the fact that consumers actually like ad breaks because it gives them the opportunity to get up and go do some of the things that we traditionally know about ad breaks. You get up, you go to the bathroom, you go run and grab a beer, etc. So I think another question that we'd love to kind of dig into is what does that actually mean around consumer attention? And what are we as an industry going to do around enabling attention as a metric? And I think this trend is, we're excited to see where this trend is going. We're seeing a lot of new measurement startup companies collaborating with agencies and brands to actually be able to measure and plan and ultimately buy against attention-worthy inventory and publishers. As I stated before, I love this trend because that really leans into what we're doing at Infillion in regard to a consumer-first ad format. And actually, that brand opportunity through our TrueX product is literally a guaranteed 30 seconds with the ad, one interaction before the billable event even goes back to that agency. So we are totally on board with this concept of empowering attention-worthy experiences, and excited to see where this takes us.
Now, as Senior Vice President of Partnerships at Infillion, what partnerships have been key to your growth?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I've spent my whole career publisher side before coming over to the ad tech side. So I have a huge appreciation and respect for publishers the demand on publishers' product and engineering teams. So at the core of my being and what keeps me up at Infillion is really trying to figure out how we can simplify the process for publishers in order to allow all innovation to be accessible for publishers. So obviously the core to our growth are our media publishers. So our technology is a value exchange that is an integration across any media type. So in streaming, our integration really allows for consumers to engage with that ad, skip the rest of the ad pod, get right back to their shows. In gaming, we work across the gaming ecosystem, the Unities and the Iron Sources and the Playworks of the world, where a value exchange can be anything from more lives, when you're gameplay, or it could be an ad-free session time. But any real media, digital media provider that relies on either ad-supported or a subscription model is our core partner approach. We work with many digital publishers, and actually lately we've seen a lot of growth in the productivity space. So if you think of, in the education space, the Chegs and the Mathways of the world, that's a subscription model that provides educational resourcing for students and college-age students, et cetera. So our value exchange there is, again, bringing brands into the narrative where brands are affording consumers more access to either more equations in that scenario or access to articles, et cetera. The one thing that I would say is that's our core partner. Where I'm really excited as to where we can go as an industry as it relates to partners. And I spend the majority of my time really looking at partners across the advertising technology industry. I'm looking for other technology players who are interested in commingling our technology in order to super serve publishers through one single tech integration. And this is where I think we as the underpinning technology of this industry have a long way to go to kind of maybe drop our egos a little bit and open up the opportunity for some really unique joint partnerships that allow us to commingle and provide ultimate services to our publishers. So we're working with anyone from similar technology, so in the creative ad format space, but also completely dissimilar. So we've been talking to operating systems, we've been talking to ad servers, we've been talking to measurement companies, So super excited to see where a partnership strategy can really help the industry speed up some of the innovation and reduce some of the friction that we're seeing today.
Well, I'm glad you brought up technology because in the past few months, we've seen things like Chat GPT, and everyone's talking about it, and generative AI. But in applying these kinds of technologies, are there any limits to it? Any limits that you've seen to artificial intelligence?
So I'm almost thinking I should do an over-under to see how many times Chat GPT is mentioned over the next few days. So super excited to see where we go. But yeah, so I really like Chat GPT. It is a little freaky. But at the same time, I'm just hopeful. I mean, let me take a step back. I think as an industry, we should be really careful how we engage with this type of AI as it relates to publishing of content or sourcing our content. I think we already have a lot of attention in Washington on privacy, and I think that if we go down a path that allows us to produce content that is going to just open more questions about, is it accurate, is it dangerous, et cetera, I think we could be in trouble as an industry. I definitely think that there's use cases for it. Earlier in my career, I launched our native publishing business at the Huffington Post, so spent a lot of time with the FTC working on the right disclosure language to let consumers know that the piece of content I'm reading is either branded, it was written by an advertiser, et cetera. I think if we're going to bring this type of narrative into our publishing ecosystems, we just have to do it with that kind of rigor and make sure that we are completely transparent with the consumer so we can continue to build trust and respect for those consumers' time, attention, and privacy.